I've seen some of your photographs, and they're pretty, well, quite frankly, they're sad. The things that the elk are running into and dealing with out there. Um, there's one of a live bull with barbed wire tangled in his antlers. So you were witnessing that animal?
Well, I did see that animal and photographed it myself, sure. The first one that I saw with barbed wire around its antlers was a dead elk, and the Park Service had found it in the pastoral zone, or on the edge of the pastoral zone. And it had barbed wire around its antlers and under its chin, and it was so tight that the animal couldn't open its mouth. It dug right into the bone. With the bone skeleton, the facial area and the antlers preserved, saved by the Park Service, it showed that the animal could not open its mouth to eat or drink. And it was a big 6 or 7 point bull, and it died from either lack of water or food or both. So there are wildlife-friendly fencing, methods which I've written about. In fact, the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management have requirements for what is called wildlife-friendly fencing. And on lands of the Forest Service and BLM, where elk, deer, or moose use that land, the fencing that's used is only 3 strands of wire. I believe one of the wires, I believe the bottom one, is to be smooth, not barbed. And I think the maximum height is 36 inches, and there has to be, I think, at least 16 inches or 18 inches at the bottom, so deer fawns and elk calves can easily, and pronghorn, which don't jump fences, can easily get by. And at the top, I believe there has to be 12 inches between the top wire and the middle wire, so that when an elk or a deer or whatever jumps one of those fences, the middle and the top wire are far enough apart so that the hind legs don't get caught, because when animals jump, their hind legs are actually forward to begin with, and if they don't clear the top wire, they wind up going between the 2 wires, and then as their legs come down to land, they go under the middle wire, and they wound up scissoring themselves, where the middle wire gets caught on top of the upper wire, and the animal's legs are just held there until they die or are rescued.
That's horrible anywhere, but that seems particularly offensive taking place in a national seashore.
Yes, or in any national park. Of course, most national parks don't have any fencing. Point Reyes is covered with fencing.
Why would a national seashore managed by the National Park Service not be one of the first places to implement the friendly fencing that you're talking about?
I have no idea. I have asked them that, and they've just said that they don't plan on doing any wildlife-friendly fencing on the perimeter fences of any ranch. I'm guessing that they think that it isn't going to prevent livestock from getting onto the roads outside those fences. They also said, and this was in a meeting I was at with the Park Service and some environmental groups, that they would not have any objection or might be cooperative with the ranchers doing wildlife-friendly fencing inside the outer boundary fences of each ranch, where they have pastures to hold cattle so that they don't range everywhere. But for outside fencing along the roads, they would never agree to wildlife-friendly fencing.
Well, they don't like the wildlife on their grazing land, so why would they want it to be friendly?
Well, that's true. The ranchers along where most fencing is damaged, those fences are about 42 inches high, and as I said, the BLM and Forest Service, their fences are 36 inches high. They break the top wire all the time, the elk do, because they don't always clear it, and unlike deer, they have enough body weight that they often break the wire, or the post even, if they're rotted, rather than getting tangled in the wires like smaller animals do more often. But there is a lot of broken fence wire out there due to elk trying to jump the fences and not always making it.
there's some, there's extreme ends of the spectrum of what people think should be happening out there, and that's elk roaming without dealing with fences, and then there's ranchers grazing cows without having to deal with elk, and then there's people who think that the elk and the cows could live harmoniously together. But that middle option means the elk are still dealing with ranching objects like barbed wire fences. So it's not really harmonious for the elk.
It's not, as long as the fencing remains not wildlife friendly.
You don't, so that solves everything if it's wildlife friendly fencing?
No, it doesn't solve anything by any means, but for one thing, it's still hard for humans to use any of these ranch lands, and basically humans don't, except for a few trails that run to important places like the Estero area or out to Abbott's Lagoon. But otherwise, the fences are not only impermeable to wildlife, but to humans. I often am tempted to walk out closer to elk that might be grazing or resting on a pasture area, but I'm not going to risk damaging my equipment or myself trying to climb through 5 wires that are from anywhere like 12 inches or less off the ground up to 42 inches. I might have done it in my younger days, but you can't trust, even by climbing next to the posts, that the staples are going to hold the wires in place. Especially a lot of the fence posts out there are rotted, at least below ground level. The fences are not even maintained well as 5 or sometimes 6 wire fences.